Scientists of Reddit, what's a discovery that should have blown people's minds, but somehow got a collective shrug from the world? Honestly, mapping the human genome was assumed to be impossible for decades, until it was done in a few short years without the fanfare it deserved. An absolutely mind-blowing accomplishment. I'm alive because of genetic testing we were only able to do because of that discovery. I'm thankful every day. As someone working on rare diseases and constantly suffers from existential crisis, your words give me so much meaning. My girlfriend has Hashimoto and her thyroid is basically non-existent anymore. She only has to take one small pill in the morning to live a normal life instead of being dead by now. Millions of people in this world take one small pill each day and are able to live with a disease that would have been deadly back in the day. Edit. I just wanted to clarify that there is no cure for Hashimoto and my partner is simply taking levothyroxine to compensate for the thyroid. I'm very sorry if I gave some people false hopes with my original comment. I remember the story of the Canadian guys who invented injected insulin in the early 1920s, having initially isolated it from dogs. At the time, kids with type I diabetes were given under 500 calories a day with 0 carbs, hoping to delay the inevitable. They basically wasted away until death, as the uncontrolled diabetes and undernourishment wrecked their bodies. The doctors walked into a Toronto hospital, injected a teenage boy on death's door. He recovered and had normal blood sugar within hours. It must have seemed like an absolute miracle. The drug firms managed to mass produce it within a few years, using cows or pigs, and the whole world changed for the better. They used the animal insulin until the late 1970s, when they figured out how to genetically modify E. coli bacteria to produce it in a vat. It's cheap AF to produce now, and requires no animals. It's one of the great miracles of science. But if you're American, you still get charged hundreds of dollars per month for it because fuck you. Pay us or die. Edit. To tell you how horrific these diets were before insulin. Most kids died of starvation-related complications within a year of diagnosis. Elizabeth Hughes was the daughter of US presidential candidate Charles Evans Hughes, who lost to Woodrow Wilson in 1916, but eventually became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In desperation to save her, they put her on a 500 calorie per day diet 6 days a week, and made her fast on the 7th day. She was about 5 feet 0 tall. By age 15 her weight had fallen to 45 lbs. Yes, 45 pounds. That's a hair more than 20 kilograms. She started getting insulin on August 15th. Within a week, she was on a 2400 calorie per day diet and gaining weight. She went home on Thanksgiving Day and never returned. She went to college, married, had 3 kids, and lived to be 73. Absolutely miraculous. It seems relevant to this thread to inform everyone that in 1994, the invention of the year went to the widget in a can of Guinness that helped carbonate a Guinness only when you opened it. Second place was the internet. Sometimes the world doesn't care because they don't really understand. Okay, but the Guinness widget is really neat though. It doesn't actually carbonate the Guinness. It nitrogenates, or whatever the thing. Because Guinness isn't carbonated, it uses nitrogen for its bubbles. That's why it's so much smoother unless I have consumed a great deal of volatile gas. But you can't get the nitrogen to hang out in the drink like you can with carbonation. So they had to invent the widget. When you open your can or drink, it rapidly releases nitrogen into the drink as if it were being poured by a bartender. It's really advanced. 4. Yeah, no. A can of beer. Just saying. I can't really drink other beers or see ideas because of the carbonation. So Guinness is great to have. And prior to the widget you couldn't really get a good pint outside of a bar, and not every bar will go to the trouble to run nitrogen just for Guinness either. The internet is pretty cool too. Not a scientist, but a student here. Central pattern generators. Neuroscientists figured out that our spine can generate rhythmic movement patterns, such as walking, without brain involvement. This is currently being explored for treatment options for spinal cord injury. A local researcher with a lab dedicated to this came to my neuroscience class last semester and did a guest lecture on it. He thinks we are within 20 years of people paralyzed from C being able to walk again with an electric implant. I think about this at least once a week and have never heard this mentioned by non-neuroscience people. Cancer immunotherapy. Drugs like Opdivo and Keytruda have changed the game in cancer treatment. They are barely 10 years old and most people don't know about them. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in summer of 2016. He did 2 rounds of chemotherapy, which nearly killed him due to infections caused by having 0 white blood cells. He managed to recover from them, and in late fall his oncologist said, "Let's give this new treatment a try." It was just approved. It's called immunotherapy. He went on it immediately, and it was a walk in the park, compared to the march through hell that was chemotherapy. In January, my father had his first scan since going on Opdivo. At the appointment to get the results, the doctor came into the office with the file, frowned at it for a moment, then stepped back out. Just as we started to panic, he came back in. He said, "I'm sorry, I had to make sure this file was yours. The results show nothing." "What do you mean, nothing?" "Nothing. No spots. The cancer is gone." He has been cancer free since then. The doctor told us later that with his diagnosis, he would have been shocked if he made it 6 months. Here we are 9 years later. We sing immunotherapy's praises every chance we get. Induced pluripotent stem cells. Historically, stem cell research used cells derived from embryonic sources. That raises tons of ethical debates. In addition, I believe it can cause issues with the body rejecting cells if they come from someone other than the transplant recipient. Scientists then discovered that you could take ordinary skin cells from a person and expose the cells to certain transcription factors which effectively reprogram them into stem cells. From there the cells can be differentiated into specific cell types like cardiac cells, neurons, etc. An example usage would be to take a Parkinson's patient who has lost 95% of the cells of the neuronal pathway involved in motor activity and other things, harvest their skin cells, convert them to stem cells, differentiate them into neurons and transplant them into the brain, thereby recovering some of the deficits. It's unbelievably fascinating stuff and blew my mind when I first learned about it. I don't think they've even scratched the surface of its potential, especially when you combine it with CRISPR to modify the genetics so you can potentially cure/treat all sorts of diseases. ITER, to be fair, it wasn't exactly shrugged off, but I would bet most average people don't know about it. ITER too. Wow, just woke up to many comments, which at first glance look quite positive. I will try to get through them all. Love to see the enthusiasm for science like this. Serial fortification in the 1990s. It has saved so many babies from spinal deformities. It is my favorite study plus outcome. https://pmc nkb nlm ni gov/articles/pmc 3,257,747/ash text equals the%20 original 20 impetus 20 for%20 phallic 44% 2C 45% 2C 46% 5D. I love this because not only did cereal save me from crippling anemia while pregnant, but my kiddo's teacher apologizes to me every time I see her for feeding my child the state mandated breakfast that I pay for, and it's usually cereal. I'm just like, we live in America. It's fortified cereal or the state health department would be suing you. It's fine. He eats veggies at home. What kind of monster would make a pickle eat vegetables? I love this entire Reddit thread. I felt so disenchanted and cynical lately about the direction society is going in, and these comments give me hope and remind me that there are some brilliant people out there. Yay, this is like the longest I've scrolled on a post in a while. Some of this makes me want to buy a textbook for the fun of it again. Learn some cool S. I learned in 20 minutes that we have a new organ. A new penicillin, which I already thought penicillin was some bats mad scientist level cool thing. Exoplanets. Memory alteration. Synthetic life. Genetic modification. Medical technology to exponentially accelerate medicine, and probably all of life as we know it. A proven association of education and a nation's wealth. I may have the words wrong. I think it was institution and I inferred it as education. And a bunch of other wildly cool things. I may even reach the bottom of this too. 000 comment post. And yet, the cynic in me is sad that this stuff isn't everywhere. The most viral and popular discourse in my country seems to actively avoid groundbreaking, life-saving, world-changing science and understanding. Maybe that's just the cynic in me seeing only that too. Vaccines. Go to the Wikipedia page for smallpox. Look at the second word. We completely eradicated a disease. It's gone. Forever. Deadly illnesses seem to be just a law of nature. But instead of finding a way to cope with it, we decided to just rewrite that F law because we F could. And now we have idiots who won't take them because some fucker wanted to sell his measles vaccine and make a few lawyers rich. Adding on to your comment, we've completely eradicated another disease called rinderpest. It was a disease that infected cattle and was also capable of infecting wild animals. It was extremely lethal, which is why it was eradicated. I feel like the James Webb Telescope hype came and went very quickly. I was very hyped keeping up with how intricate and difficult it was to design, launch and deploy that marvel orbiting the sun. If something were to go wrong, very small chance we could fix it. The Hubble's problems we could fix because it was in Earth's low orbit and astronauts could get in there and fix it. Shit, while we're at it, add Hubble to that list. And the space shuttle missions. The fact that the JSWT discovered that the furthest objects in the visible universe are over 40 billion light years away, in a universe that is only 13.8 billion years old, should have blown everyone's mind. It blew mine for sure. Light has traveled through space for 13.8 billion years since the Big Bang. So you might expect the universe to have radius of 13.8 billion light years. But space itself has been expanding. So the universe is much bigger. CRISPR Cas9 is actual Jurassic Park shit. People who were born blind have had their sight regained due to genetic tinkering made possible by this biological tech. Mosquitoes can be eliminated, practically eradicating malaria by editing the genes, which are then passed on to offspring, making them sterile. Food can be, and has been, made more nutritious, as in the case of golden rice, producing more vitamin A in impoverished countries. It's Gattaca in the flesh, and people just shrugged at it. A lot of people are asking why do I still have mosquitoes, or why hasn't this happened yet, and I can say that this technology is still extremely nascent. It's a massive achievement of humanity and another foothold in our ability to shape nature, but it is still inaccurate. Targeting specific genes in different species, let alone our own, is time consuming and requires many trials to get right. Targeting multiple genes at the same time is exponentially more difficult. Remember that genes are just DNA sequences at random events on the entire chain, and each sequence is rarely actually next to each other on the chain. Some of you have also mentioned that we don't fully understand the effect this would have on not only one species but all those others that interact with whichever we were trying to alter. In short, it's incredibly high tech, and with incredible technology comes incredible questions and incredible consequences that need to be considered before fully deploying. PCR technology turned genetics into a productive science in a way that very few people realize. PCR is straight up magic. To be fair, the fella said he pulled off the side of the road to follow a glowing raccoon who shared with him the knowledge of 10 which allowed him to rush back to the lab while still high on LSD and develop the PCR method. So it kinda is straight up magic. RIP Kari Mullis. You mad genius. The fact that long ago there were several different species of humans who lived at the same time. I grew up in the midst of the AIDS crisis. It was twice as scary as COVID and 10 times as devastating. The fact that they essentially found a cure and AIDS/HIV is no longer a physical or social death sentence is overwhelming in the best way, and the fact that it's rarely talked about is overwhelming in the worst way. I'm a microbiologist, and every time I taught the HIV/AIDS section I was still amazed at how fast we went from knowing nothing about this disease to today where we are testing vaccines and have treatments that keep infected pregnant patients from passing HIV to their babies, or keep infected people from passing it to their partners. And we can allow infected people to live out their natural life. I agree, it's amazing how this went from devastating to almost a non-issue in less than 2 generations. I will forever be grateful to how much Princess Diana, Elizabeth Taylor, and Michael Jackson did to change the perception. Those three treating AIDS patients like normal humans went so far. You should probably throw Magic Johnson in there too. Obviously a distinction between AIDS and HIV, but one of the most popular athletes in the US, in the middle of his prime, gets the gay disease because he was sleeping around with a ton of women and has gone on to live a very long and successful and what appears to be very healthy life. He even came back after the diagnosis and played basketball again. Something I'm sure most people on initial news thought was basically a zero-sum chance. The invention of the blue LED. That changed absolutely everything in electronics. The blue LED allowed us the final piece needed to produce true white light. Paved the way for everything with a screen. Not as crazy as other ones, but as a type 1 diabetic I find it crazy that they can just make insulin, hahaha. You're telling me my organs can't but somebody in a lab can just find the formula. Hahaha. I don't think this is underrated. As my biochemistry professor used to say, the purification of insulin and evidence that it can be used to treat T1DM put Toronto on the map. But I do think what's cool and maybe more underrated is recombinant DNA technology. Everyone panics about GMOs, but we are getting E. coli to produce proteins for us. That's GMOs. Do not get me on my soapbox about GMOs. Where do they think all those high yield, nutritionally dense crops come from? Oh no. Don't mess with my genetically pure blueberries. Gasp. That wheat has been crossbred to resist disease. New. Claude Shannon and information theory. It took a while to grab hold and for the technology to catch up. But computers, cell phones, streaming, www, etc. would have been significantly delayed for not his work. One of my favorite theories of all time. Truly brilliant and relatively unheard of by most people. I worked on the HPV vaccine. I helped prove you can give it to children and just eliminate that entire disease. Never gotta worry about that S again. Nobody gives a S. Half the country apparently hates us for even doing it. Edit. I can't explain how much it means to me for this comment to take off. Especially now. Thank you all. Much love. I give a shit. The fact that we have intelligent people working for the betterment of humanity, even the half that wallows in ignorance, gives me hope. Thank you for your contributions to all of our well-being. No. Thank you. I typically work in rare disease, so I don't get to brag much, kind of how rare works. Right, but anytime I get to talk about that one and people are happy, it gives me validation. Not a scientist, but it blows my mind we casually walk around with devices that can show us where we are within a few feet anywhere on Earth, and how to get to anywhere else. GPS, LED screens, lithium batteries and CPUs. Sometimes it's the combination that creates something mind-blowing. When cell phones went from analog to digital in the early 90s we could only transfer 9600 bps data. It's plus 1000x times faster now. 1. The discovery of gravitational waves, which should open a whole new way to see the universe, including events before the ionization event in the early universe. 2. AI tools that can efficiently determine the structure of proteins, which was proceeding very slowly before this discovery. HIV antiretrovirals. Growing up in the 80s this was a much needed medication that would have been loudly announced. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like it's just another med. I think it's amazing, and I'm so glad it's saving so many lives. I see ads on my TV, and I'm always amazed at the advances made in that field. Eastern Bloc nations, Georgia in particular, have been using bacteriophages to battle bacteria infections for many decades, while the West focused on developing antibiotics. You can get bacteriophage treatment in the US when they've tried everything else and you've somehow managed to survive it. Seems the drug companies have a hard time figuring out how to make money on the treatment, so it gets pushed to the very thin edge margin of medicine. Update. Bacteriophages are used as a matter of course in genetic research. I've specified and used them myself. This is not that. Historically the technique is to find a naturally occurring, mutated, phage that will attack the specific bacteria in question. In the US, The overriding concern has been the potential of sugar toxin, or similar, producing genes present in the fridge. This latter is wrong-headed 2 ways in my experience, which makes the assertion suspect to me, though I haven't seen anything conclusive. The decades of research prior haven't shown this to be an issue. Regardless, it's an almost trivial test with today's technology. A fun question: guess where you usually look for a suitable fridge?